Hey photographers, we're in the YouTube studio in Toronto and we're just preparing for a shoot, and we've got the Panasonic EVA1. Michael Fawcett from Panasonic is here to help me get it set up. Michael, what are the features about the Panasonic EVA1 that made it so attractive to me?
I think the key features when they designed the camera was they had researched with a lot of cinematographers, independent shooters, and basically said, you know, we're going to develop a new camera. What features are important to you? So we wanted to make the design familiar. The body design of the camera is familiar. Where the buttons are located are familiar. The design is very familiar. And one of the key features is the 5.7K sensor, as well as a 1.2 kilogram body weight. So those are the primary features of this camera that set it aside from other cameras in this category.
What kind of lenses does it use?
The standard mount that comes with the camera is an EF mount, which is there's over 1 million EF mount lenses on the market. Mm-hmm. So we picked a lens mount that's very, very popular.
Right, and we're setting it up today with a Sigma?
We have a Sigma. It's one of their new cine lenses. So this is the T2 18-35.
Tell me how it's powered. What kind of power supply do we use here?
So the camera uses a standard camcorder type battery. So the small form factor pops into the back of the camera. It comes in 3 sizes. So we have a 5500 milliamp hour, which is the standard battery. That will give you close to 2 hours of operation time. Right. We have a 8900 milliamp hour battery, which will give you close to 4 hours of operating time, and a 11,800 milliamp hour that will give you close to 6 hours of operation time. All of them fit directly into the slot of the camera, and the design was to make sure that no matter which one you used, the camera would still hold its balance.
What kind of media do you record on?
So the camera comes with 2 media slots, and we record on the new SD standard called V90. So those are 400 megabit cards and high speed. You can record using V60 or V30 cards, but that will limit the codecs that you can use within the camera.
And then external connectors. I see there are XLR for audio.
Yeah, we have 2 professional XLR audio inputs. We also have a built-in stereo mic on the camera. We also have audio control on the side, so we've got the traditional gauges that you would normally use, as opposed to having to manipulate it through a menu. A lot of people like the fact that they could use the dials. We've got a time code in, which can act as time code in and out. So this camera can be a master or a slave using timecode. And we've also got a 6G SDI output,
which we've connected to the Shogun so that we can see the menus in a minute. Let's start by configuring the video settings.
Okay, so you would, on the side of the camera or on the actual side of the grip, there is a menu button, which will allow you to access the menu. So on the side of the camera, there's a scroll wheel, and there's also a scroll wheel on the actual grip itself. In order to set the camera up for whatever type of resolution you want, we would go into system mode.
So let's go with UHD 4K.
Okay.
And let's shoot at 30 frames.
Okay. So right now, as you can see, the camera is set up for 2997, sensor mode, Super 35, 5.7K.
No, what are the other options there?
So in here we have other options where we can do Super 35 mix, 2.8K. So what that does is takes the full information off the 5.7K sensor, downsamples it to 2.8K, and then allows you to record up to 120 frames per second in 2K or HD. Then the third mode is what we call 4:3 crop mode mix. What we've done is we've taken a crop size, so cropping the size of a 4:3 sensor, or recorded at 2.2K, and then it will allow you to shoot up to 240 frames per second in 1080 or 2K mode.
So we talked a little bit about codecs. Where do we set those up?
Codecs would be down here. So right now we're set up at Super 35 5.7K. We're at 3840 by 2160, which is UHD. So my options for codecs are 422 long GOP 150 megabit or 420 long GOP 100 megabit. But the new codecs coming will allow us to record up to 400 megabit all intra frame recording, as well as there'll be a 200 megabit intra record capability as well.
And then are there different settings for Cinema 4K? Should we have a quick look at those?
In Cinema 4K, we would select 4096 by 2160. Yeah. And in here right now, the same. We're limited to 420 long GOP 100 or 422 long GOP 150.
Right. But
these are both at 10-bit.
before we start setting the exposure, what kind of metering and measurement tools?
The camera has a waveform monitor built in. You can select a vector as well if you're more comfortable with a vector.
Oh.
We also have a YGET in the feature in the camera, which is like a spot meter. So it will allow you to turn that on and then measure 18% gray, or just measure around the different settings that you're looking at to see what the exposure is in that particular area.
Right.
So a lot of people don't realize that YGET is a spot meter, but it's a very powerful tool.
DSC Labs has brought the Chroma Dumont chart. Let's line up on that and get our exposure set. So we'll start by setting the ISO. Is that the right place to start? Or
yeah. The other feature of the EVA1 is it has dual base ISO. So we have a base ISO of 800 and we have a base ISO of 2500. And when we talk about that, it's not just a clean image at 2500. We're actually retaining 14 stops of dynamic range at 2500 as well.
So then it's good that DSC Labs also brought the XYLA chart, and we'll have a look at that in a minute as well. Yeah.
Right now we're lined up on the chart.
In this situation, which ISO would we use? Would we use the 800 or the 2500?
It's your choice. It depends on what kind of depth of field you want. If you're trying to minimize depth of field, and the lighting conditions in here are allowing us to use 800 with what we're set up at right now. If we open wide, it gets very hot, close right down. Now, so for right now, I'm sitting on this, let's say f11 on the lens. I can now go into the camera settings, and I can scroll through the different ISOs.
Okay, so that's not a setting that appears on screen. You're just turning a dial.
Yeah, we can select, for example, home screen, and we can do it there as well.
Right. But so can we see the waveform on the screen while we're doing that?
Yes. If I go to home screen and hit the info button, then select switches, it will actually tell me my waveform is button number 5.
Oh, I see. Yep.
So we go back into our camera settings screen, output settings, go all the way down to EI assist, and that's where we would actually set the waveform, and we would set wave vector.
Right.
And now if we hit exit, now when we select button number 5, there's my vector.
Yep.
Off, waveform, or vector.
Right.
Saw the home screen. So this is a screen that is also very familiar to a lot of camera people. Mm-hmm. It's in the Vericam lineup.
Yeah.
So what it is it's a very user-friendly screen. I can use the touch screen on my LCD to navigate. So if I wanted to change my ISO, I just push the touch screen, and now I can use the scroll wheel to go from 2000 down to 200.
Right.
That's using ISO 800 as my base. If you start to go above 800, you will actually start to add gain noise. So by setting it at 2500 base, I can now go down from 2500 without adding any more noise.
Right.
So if you look here, I can set the base ISO as 800. I can set it as native only. So when it's in native only, it'll switch between 800 and 2500. Those are the only two options I have.
Okay.
And if I set it to 2500 as my base, now I can go and change my ISO. Let's say I started shooting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the light level started to disappear, but I wanted to keep the same depth of field.
Right.
The only choice you have if you have a camera that has one ISO is that you'd have to go up. You'd have to increase the ISO to compensate for the loss of light, or open the iris on the camera to compensate for, which then shortens the depth of field, and now your shots don't match.
Right.
So what you can do with this is by being able to switch to a higher ISO, I can maintain the same look that I had at 800 during the day, but now in the evening, now I can shoot at 2500, and most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference because the noise levels are very similar.
Yep. And which gamma curve are we using right now? What's the
So right now internally we're using Vlog
for
the recording, and then we're just outputting Rec 709.
So what are the options that are, so they can be set independently?
Yeah, so you can set, if you're using Vlog as your recording, you can set only Rec 709 as your output, or Vlog.
Right. So then what are the other recording modes that are available?
Okay, so we have in the camera settings, we would go into under system and we would go into color settings.
Mm-hmm.
And here we can select up to 5 scene files. If we select scene 1 as our main, this is what scene 1 would look like.
Right.
So it's trying to achieve a Vericam type look.
Yeah.
So we're taking advantage of the dynamic range. We're adding some color. We're
Right.
giving you a look. All of the scene files are user programmable.
Right.
So you can create your own. If you don't like what we created, you can create your own scene files. Using an SD card, you can load them right into the camera.
Right. So what are some of the settings that are available for creating your own scenes?
I can go in and adjust black pedestal.
Comprehensive?
Yeah. I can go in and adjust my gammas.
Okay.
So what we've got is this one that was created by Panasonic called V255570L1.
Are there other ones that we could choose there?
You can't within this scene file, but if you were to edit it, you could. But as you can see, we can change detail, skin detail, chroma, matrix, color correction. So there's many settings in the camera that we can adjust. And if we go back to our home screen, I can select my shutter here, and I'm able to then make my adjustments to shutter angle very quickly.
Right. That's the cinematographer's friendly setting.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if you want for video type settings, we can go in and set it for that as well. Some people prefer shooting in shutter angle, and some people prefer in seconds.
So we're at 30 frames, so we're going to want 1/60th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can dial right up to 2000 or down to half shutter 60th. So we're at 60 here.
How do we set our white balance?
So white balance can be done on the actual camera. We can do it in the menu as well, but there is on the side here, there's a white balance switch. So if I select there, now I can use my scroll wheel and I can do what we call auto white tracking.
Mm-hmm.
So in auto white tracking, once you've set the white, it will then track that white as you're moving around. So it keeps that white balance as its reference.
Oh.
We have auto white balance memory.
So we can capture and store?
Yeah. So we have multiple settings. The unique thing about this camera is you can also go into the menus and you can set any value that you want. So you're not limited to the presets that Panasonic created. You can go in and say, I want 6,230 as my Kelvin as my white balance.
Shift and
so we can scroll through. As you can see, the settings are changing. Right. Or if we don't know what it is, we hit AWB, which is our auto white balance memory, and this is actually now where we set our white balance.
Right.
We've got black balance as well in the camera setup, because black balance is also very important. Typically, if you're going to do a black balance, you let the camera run for a while, you let the sensor warm up, and then you do a black balance, which is you just put the lens cap on in front,
mm-hmm.
and you just do ABB, auto black balance. It will then measure the black level and say, okay, this is my standard. We have, while we're in here, if you notice, we have noise reduction. I have the ability to go in and adjust noise reduction in the camera. So there's 2 settings. There's setting 1 or 2.
So Michael, we've turned out all the lights. We're looking at the DSC Labs XYLA chart, and on this chart, as we go from the left, every rectangle has 1 stop less light. Now, I don't know how your counting is, but I'm seeing more than 14 stops of range. I'm seeing, maybe it's not great definition, but I'm seeing down to maybe 15 or 16.
Yeah, I think what we would kind of probably stop it where we can see the full rectangle.
Right.
If you start to disappear, I think that's probably where they would say that would be the end of
range.
The advertised range.
Very good. And we're looking now with V-Log.
Mm-hmm.
Can we check the other scene modes and see what the response is?
Yes. And what I can do is I can select the color here, and I've selected main color. If I go in here, I can select scene 1. And as you see on the bottom, we have SDI out showing scene 1, HDMI scene 1, and LCD scene 1. And now if I go back to my view screen.
Wow, that's a dramatically different response curve. I mean, you can see it on the waveform, but now there's more of a curve in the response, whereas the V-Log looked pretty flat. Right, so that would be the right iris setting, or sorry, you're adjusting ISO or iris?
Iris.
So that would be the right iris setting for this scene mode.
Yeah.
And that's considerably less range than we were seeing with Vlog.
Yeah, because this is essentially now a baked-in color space.
So using Vlog really does add a lot of dynamic range.
It's basically giving you the full canvas to do whatever you want with the color in post. Well, I'm going to switch directly to scene 5, because scene 5 was actually designed for HDR. As you can see, we're starting to get our dynamic range back.
Right, and I think we can increase the exposure. The farthest left chip looks like it's not somewhere there. Yep, no, that's maybe a little high. Yep, somewhere there. Okay, Michael, so that was at 800. Can we switch to ISO 2500 and see if that makes a difference?
Yes. So this is 2500 in Vlog.
We're seeing probably 14, maybe one more step of range, but this is definitely going to require some adjustment, some color correction in post.
Correct.
Yep.
You want to see HDR? While we're here, we might as well just do it.
You know, Michael, let's try everything.
So scene number 5. So this is ISO 2500 with the scene file 5 applied.
Right, and we could probably pull the levels up right about there. Impressive response. They might have to make a XYLA chart that has even more steps on it. Yeah. Let's go on and do focus. I'm assuming with this lens we're not getting autofocus, so what kind of tools do we have to make sure that our shots focus?
In here we have what's called LCD Focus Assist.
Okay.
So under there we have expand mode. So what expand mode does, it will actually expand the image.
Yep.
I believe it's button number 8.
Right.
So once it's there, I've got it set to hold, so it'll stay there as long as I have it.
Right.
I can also use my scroll wheel to pan around. So we under peaking, it's a traditional peaking that you would normally use. We also have what's called squares. So if I turn it on to peaking squares and hit exit, there's my traditional red peaking. If I select it again, it gives me focus squares. And what focus squares do, if you can see as I'm adjusting focus, is showing me by the larger squares what's in focus and what's not in focus.
So you look at the object that you're trying to focus, and the square that's on it, you try and maximize its size.
Correct.
Okay. So are there different colors available or different levels of sensitivity?
So we have the peaking level, we have high, medium, or low.
Yep.
We also have the color, so red, green, white, or red, depending on your choice. Black and white. So what that does, if I turn that on when I'm using the focus assist, it'll switch the screen to black and white. It again is a tool to aid focus. And we also have open iris mode. So with an auto iris lens, it'll open the iris full, allow you to focus, and then close the iris back down.
Right. So let's go on and configure the audio. Now, right now we've got the MC700 shotgun on it. For the shoot is put on a Sony wireless, and we'll connect that to one of the XLR inputs.
Okay. So in my menu setting, I have an audio setting. If I go in here, this is where I can set my channel. I can select them as the internal channels, which are the built-in mic, or I can select input 1. So if you go into the actual audio input settings and adjust through, we have an option under input 1 line. We can select line or mic in. So typically when you select mic, it has 48 volt phantom power to power the mic.
Oh, that's the next setting down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we would tell the camera if we have, if we're using power.
If we need, 48
or
volts
off.
or not.
Yeah.
Right.
And then here we can actually set the dB rating.
Oh, the gain.
The gain on the actual mic.
Right. Oh, right.
And
That's the
levels.
gain range, and then the gain control is on the side of the camera.
Yes.
Right. Can input 1 be assigned to both channels?
Yeah.
Can you assign that now to input 1?
Yes. Okay. Yes, we can.
So that's the idea. Right. So where do we set the audio levels?
On the side.
Ah.
On the
Oh,
dials.
right. Those were the dials.
We have mechanical dials on the side here.
Right. This camera has a built-in stabilizer?
It has an electronic image stabilization.
Right.
So as opposed to an actual mechanical stabilization device, what it does, it will reduce the image resolution by 15%, but you won't lose any resolution below
it's a
4K.
7K sensor,
Correct.
right?
So we'll still retain above 4K native recording, but we've got stabilization turned on.
Right.
You will lose 15% of your image.
There's a lot of modularity here, and this is one of the things that I keep reading that people like, that you can take a lot of the components off and the camera still works. For example, the handle comes off.
Yes.
The
handle's
audio,
basically 2 screws.
Right.
And it lifts off. The LCD is unscrews here.
Right.
We've got the hand grip.
Yeah.
That essentially is a single connector here. Push a button, and the grip will remove from the camera.
Right.
So this can actually be one of our accessory manufacturers has made a grip. Hand grip that this will actually connect onto the end of.
Let me ask about overheating. That seems to be an issue with some cameras. I have the feeling that the size of this camera means it's not going to be an issue, but is there any kind of cooling or other systems?
The camera does have a fan that can be set manually or auto. So if you set it to auto, it'll just increase or decrease the fan speed based on the amount of heat that's in the camera. Or like I said, you can set it to low or high manually, depending if what the noise conditions are that you're trying to take care of.
Michael, I have the feeling that we're just about ready to shoot for my video for next week. Let me go get changed. In the meantime, let's say thanks very much for coming by and loaning us the camera for the shoot and configuring it for us today.
You're welcome.
Thanks so
It was
much.
a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.